6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Podcast. It's brought to you by the Full Press Coverage Network and CanucksHockeyBlog.com. I'm your host, Anna Forsyth, at aforsyth03 on the Twitters. As you can tell, Chris is not here. He is on IR, unfortunately, again. On again, off again, kind of like Travis Dermott, Tucker Pullman, probably shouldn't be on the ice, so unfortunately he is not here. But a more than able replacement, we have Patrick Johnson of The Province, Rising Action on the Twitter. PJ, how you doing?
I am good. I thought Chris was on vacation. I was like, it's spring break? Figure it was something like that.
Yeah, no.
He's actually
nothing as glamorous as that, unfortunately.
All right, get well, Chris.
He is down low, but yeah.
All right,
if you want to
Chris.
jump on Twitter or Discord to say get well, yeah. I could make a joke here, but I honestly feel so bad for him. He's had a rough go of things recently, so yeah. Hope you're okay, Chris. PJ's I'm sure our listeners know, but one of our oldest friends on the show, and I'm not referring to his age, but kind of referring to his age too, but I think you have been on even in the Chris and Clay days you were on, hey?
Yeah, Chris and Clay. Usually not Clay. I think I usually would show up because Clay wasn't there, so it was Chris and Matt, and we and we do it at the old NW studios. Yeah, way back when.
Oh, yeah. That was just before my time. I was in the NW studio still, but, then we got kicked out, and then we're in the hot box, and then COVID happened, so, yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't been on in a while, so, just to, catch us up, how have you found covering the team this season? Just because, starting out, new management, all this fresh hope.
Yeah.
Bruce's first full season, we got this, and then we are here now. Is that kind of, you expected that, or?
I mean, I was one of many who was like, well, this team has to make playoffs.
I mean, yeah, we always joke about us being the Positive Playoffs podcast because the team is set up that way, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I wrote this on Saturday. First of all, you kind of think about what if they changed the coach. I think the coach has something to do with it. I think it is a personnel. It is largely a personnel story right now. I mean, you look at the beginning of the season, they struggled so much to break the puck out. The amount of time they spent in their own end, chasing around after their own mistakes. And they're not in the same spot. That's the difference. I've talked to a couple people about this, and they're all you look at the personnel, and you look at even though there's 3 AHL call-ups, Brisebois, Willanen, and Juleson even have all done a better job, and Burrows, who I think we knew from off the top, have all done a better job, finding breakouts, and the timing's better. I mean, I think there's a few details, Rick Tocchet mentioned it the other day, he thinks the players are actually talking better, just making more noise. And if anybody's ever played on a team, most people are not attuned to make noise. I'm a person that is attuned to make noise when I'm playing whatever sport I'm in.
Yeah.
And it's,
I'm a shouter.
You need to, anyway. And it's, it was kind of interesting to hear that that's a challenge even for professional players.
Yeah.
But I would say, bottom line, the goaltending was Thatcher Demko was terrible in the first half. He obviously was playing in a difficult environment, perhaps worse than even last year, but he wasn't doing anything. The guy we've seen since he's come back was never there in the fall. And, it's interesting. He's talked a little bit about just how he had to sort of reset himself mentally. For whatever reason, I don't think his sort of mental game was there in the fall, which is surprising for a guy who's taken it so seriously in his whole life. So, you know, I think they get some better goaltending. I mean, they're still like they're still playing fire wagon hockey, but you know, they didn't have a single win that a goalie stole for them in the first half. And people like to blame Spencer Martin and Colin Delia, but like they weren't there to be the guy. You know?
No, not at all.
So to say it was a goaltending problem, I mean, yeah, it was a goaltending problem as much as Thatcher Demko like didn't do anything. But in the end, the team just didn't play well enough in front of the goalies. And, you know, to be a playoff team, they needed to kill penalties better, and they didn't do that. And they, you know, yeah. So are we where I thought we'd be? I don't think so. I mean, I did wonder about the loss of Brad Shaw, for instance. You know, and Trent Cull obviously wasn't up to snuff because they let him go. And Mike Yeo, I mean, I guess lately he's been doing better with PK. Like, PK has been a little bit better, but even under Tocchet, it's only running at like 74%. So that's not very good.
That's not good.
No. So yeah, I would say, you know, it's as far as covering the team goes, I mean, it was starting to get, you're like, oh my God. I mean, even when even before the All-Star break, like it was over. There was 40 games to go. Like, and you're like, how am I supposed to do this?
Bleak.
It was bleak.
Yeah. And
then they changed the coach. You know, Bruce was great. Really enjoyed Bruce, but we'd run out of questions for Bruce, you know?
Yeah.
I showed up in Pittsburgh, 2 months ago on the road. The last road trip I was on. Postmedia is not sending reporters on the road anywhere. But the last road trip I was on, we show up in Pittsburgh. It's Bruce's birthday. And I was the only reporter to show up to practice because it was, I went to Winnipeg and I went then to Pittsburgh. Getting to Pittsburgh from Vancouver is tricky. I said, the hell, let's go to Winnipeg. We got to stop somewhere. Getting from Winnipeg to Pittsburgh was hard. But I got there and I got to show up there in time for practice. And I was the only reporter. And, the way it goes on the road is, sometimes, usually Murph's at every practice. And some, Shorty and Cheech usually come and watch practice. And sometimes generally they don't have to scrub because they can just basically go in Bruce's office. Like Cheech was old friends with Bruce. He could just walk in his office, ask him any question he wanted. So his insights, I mean, so the insights are always a little more, his nuances are a little more perhaps. I mean, they were old friends. And it was a little, I don't even know what the word would be, insight, with even more insight. Like, you get to know a guy a little bit just back and forth and this kind of thing. And especially like once we stopped recording, every once in a while you have these little chats. And this is one of those days. And I said, happy birthday, Bruce. And he goes, oh, I don't know if there's much happiness around here. And it was sad. You just felt bad for him. Yeah. And I said, Bruce, listen, we're not going to scrub today. And we had a little chat. We chatted about stuff, and there was nothing, I said it was off the record, so there's nothing there. But I will say there was nothing that was like particularly shocking. Nothing like, oh my God, this guy there was never anything like that. But it was just, it was just sort of, it was no different than anything we really ever had on the record, which was like, we're out of answers, And that was a guy that at that point, was 2 months into thinking, or almost 2 months into thinking he was going to be let go. So we had a coaching change, and at least there's that, and trying to see if there's anything different. I mean, obviously coaches talk, it's how you deploy things, and there is a bit of a difference, at least, but I mean, whether that's the players or any more than anything, I think you're fair to wonder. So at least from that standpoint, there's still things to talk about. And, they did make a bunch of trades, even if not everyone made total sense.
Yeah.
So it's never boring.
So you've demoralized us in the first section. So great job. I feel depressed.
I can build you back up.
Okay. You know what? Let's take a super quick break and we'll just dive back into the last week in Rewind. So Canucks just had super bonkers schedule, and then just even more bonkers than usual. Yeah. Back for one game on the road again. Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. That was one of the weirdest. Nobody understood that one. It was just nobody was actually. I think just nobody looked at the schedule and was like, "Wait, what?"
We talk about it all the time because Canucks have a lot of road trips that don't make sense over the years. It's often they go to the Midwest, and then they go to the South, and then they go to the Northeast, and then back. That's always happened, but I don't know if it's happened as much that it's been back for one game, back out again. That's, yeah.
Years ago, it was when Brian Burke was on with Hockey Night in Canada, he detailed in fact, I'm trying to think when this, it might have been my first season on the road. Anyway, he detailed a road trip that literally never happened about the Canucks. And I was just like, that's really weird. Why would you just not use one of the ones that does this? He tried to claim there was a trip where they went all the way to Columbus, like came home, and then went to DC. And I'm like, that didn't happen. But what did happen was that, yes, they were in St. Louis, came home to face the Bruins, and then went to Dallas, which was bizarre. I think
honestly, they did better against Boston than I suspected under any circumstances. Never mind that one, but yeah.
But I mean, just to throw it way back, I mean, the opening season trip was a trip. I mean, they Canucks usually have a couple 5-gamers, and they usually have a 6-gamer because that's just how it goes. But generally what you want is not much. But once you get out there, not much movement. And I would say that trip that we took, I mean, there was a lot of games. That trip that we took, that I was on, that I was talking about, was, Winnipeg. Vancouver to Winnipeg's not that long, really. Winnipeg to Pittsburgh, if you're flying a charter, is not that long. And then once you're in Eastern time zone, like Pittsburgh to Tampa is like an hour and a half. Tampa, obviously, over to Fort Lauderdale is nothing. Fort Lauderdale up to Raleigh is nothing. Then the flight home was a long one, but you get an extra day anyway. So it's, it works out.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, honestly, other than that weird one, like, they haven't had any weird trips this year. But, no, it's not
been too bad.
No.
I mean, pull me up if I'm wrong here, but I kind of, lost any hope that the Canucks had any swing with the league when they couldn't start their 50th season at home. They're naming a new captain. And they're just everyone knows for over a year that it's Bo Horvat. And yet they still had to wait another 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there was an actual reason for that. And I don't remember. I think, I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, Canucks are pathetic. I think that's probably just the reason. That's fine. Anyway, back on the rails. The Canucks got 3 wins in a row at home this week.
4 wins total. 4 wins in a row total.
Yeah, 4 wins in a row total. But major question, how do we get them to stop doing that? I guess stop playing terrible teams is maybe the first answer, but...
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Senators were going to put up more of a fight than they did, because the Senators were playing well. There was not any denying this, and they looked... they weren't even there for most of the game. So, I mean, obviously a game in Dallas is going to be tough, but game against Dallas is going to be tough.
Yes.
On the road trip, it's two or 3 games it's not, I mean, Arizona has been playing better, but you're still I think the Canucks, I mean, in the end, this is the other thing, and this all ties into the whole big picture story, the Canucks, as they're currently constructed, I mean, the way Pettersson's playing, the way Hughes is playing, the way Demko's playing, this is not a bad team. This is a team that's going to, they just beat the Leafs, right? They did actually reasonably. I mean, the Bruins, the Bruins game, I think the Bruins were in second gear the whole game, so I have a hard time evaluating that one.
They were tied.
But, I mean, they played pretty well against the Wild. But, they got some tough ones coming up here. The Kings, I mean, the Kings in LA is always tough. And the Kings, I mean, we'll see. They seem to have rounded into sort of be the team they are. So I think, that'll be a tough one. Back to back, I mean, Anaheim's awful. But it's back to back. It's never easy. But, they come home, VGK. They go, come home, VGK, San Jose. I'm just looking at how things are going. There's some difficult games. But
not a lot,
they play the Blackhawks twice. I mean, it's funny, they play, they're in St. Louis, and the Blues, my buddy's a Blues fan, and he's just man, they're doing the same thing as the Canucks, they keep winning. So that's gonna be a weird one. I don't know what the incentives are there, but you close the year with the Ducks and Coyotes. There's a good, they're gonna run out the year with a, good chance of finishing with a pretty good, last, what are we at, 18 games or whatever it is. Pretty good record in that last stretch. So, I don't know. I don't. What do you need to do? Well, I'm not. I think because you don't want to. You shouldn't be cheering for anybody getting hurt. Is what I'm saying.
No.
So that you're stuck.
No, exactly. I mean, yeah, when you build up a team that's kind of constructed on, like, being almost dependent on these superstars like Pedersen, like Hughes, like,
Yeah.
I mean, even Miller of late, like, I don't know if they're trying extra hard to prove that they don't hate each other, but they're, like, constantly hugging on the ice. Their special team works is really good together. But yeah,
Well,
it is funny.
and this is something that I've said, in more than one place. Like, when you're not winning, everything is terrible. And when you are winning, you put up with more. And, I mean,
yeah.
I would say, and I've written it a few times now, but, like, I had the thing with Miller last week where he mentioned, I realized I went back and listened. I was like, wait, he referenced the game in Calgary when he got ripped because he didn't back check. And he actually wasn't great in the last sort of 2 weeks of the Boudreau, or last 3 weeks of the Boudreau era. But once Tucker arrived, like, the numbers were way better. And I think a lot of that is because they're breaking the puck out better. It's not just like we look at it, but like Cam Schron, who's been tracking these things all season, he's like, they're carrying the puck out better. You talk to people who actually watch, like, who know how to watch the game, from sort of a tactical level, and they're like, no, they're doing a better job. Like, you can see, or you see less of the issues they've been having before in terms of moving the puck.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference. And
yeah.
So Miller's playing well. Like, their main guys are playing well, and they're getting, like Dakota Joshua's playing with a lot of confidence. I mean, he's a guy that, to be effective, he's been this most of the season. He's a guy who he plays in straight lines. He gets on the puck. He's a big, strong dude who knows that if he can get into a space, he's not going to be pushed out of that space. And if he can get on into someone else's space, they're going to have a hard time navigating with him in it. So, a guy like that's playing well. Sheldon Dries is a great story. He's got 10 goals now. And I think has gotten better as the season's gone along, as he's found a bit more of a more kind of nuanced role. Like, he's not a guy that can play heavy minutes, but he is a guy that can help you if you manage him right. The classic story of the quality that you can actually find in sort of, there's like 50 really good guys in the NHL, and then there's like 800 guys that are good enough to fill out the rest of the spots in varying degrees of quality. So, you've got 100-something guys in the AHL who are good enough to do it. And Dries is a guy that seems to be making work. So, there's things happening, and I mentioned all the call-ups. Like, it actually kind of amazes me watching. Like, I watched Christian Wolanin very closely. And, he's not a perfect. He makes bad reads at times. He makes some poor decisions on it. But, like, he does so many other things really well that I'm like, why did they waste time with Riley Stillman? Like, what? I mean, they saw an opportunity to flip him. They did turn him into a prospect, so okay, that's good. But it just was such a strange process in the end. They had to get out from under Dickinson, so they picked up a contract back, and they played a bunch out of him. They played him a bunch. I mean, it was funny. Like, he was less terrible in the last while, but like, he didn't do anything, and he couldn't break the puck out. And Wolanin can, and you're like, So if you really were trying to win, why were you doing this? I don't know. From that standpoint, it's been a very weird year.
Yeah, I think like you've hit on like a few things there that kind of come under this one umbrella. Like, Chris and I talk about Jags all the time. Just a guy like. There's a few Jags on the bottom of this roster, but like, they're finally being like, first of all, you got to pay them like Jags, like, not be paying them like millions a year, and you got to play them like Jags. Like, you can't be depending on Riley Stillman to like prop up these minutes. And like, as you say, Dakota Joshua in that more limited role, Sheldon Dries like not playing a ton of minutes, and like, as a more limited offensive producer, like, he has a role. I'm, like, a huge Sheldon Dries fan, so,
good guy.
Like, because, well, I watch a lot of AHL, so, like, Team Sheldon last year, both the Sheldons were really fun to watch. But, like, even I was just saying in the first half of the season, like, this is not, like, how he looks good, right? So, yeah, I think he's kind of just a fun player to watch because he has a real nose for the puck and just, like, squirrels his way into finding it.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. But, yeah, like, you can't ask him to be anything more than a fourth-line player because that ain't it.
But that's fine. It's... I had something. You said something I was going to say. I was going to comment on it. Oh.
AHL?
No, it was before that. It doesn't matter. It was something you said in passing that I thought about. I was like, oh, that'd be a good thing to pick up on, but carry on.
It's all good. Yeah, and like we can stop talking about the Jags at the bottom of the roster.
It was that. Sorry, it was guys. It was actually funny. We had it was quite an interesting debate about definition of not just of a similar term. He's a guy, and I would say that Drance and I are like, oh, he's a guy. Like, yeah, you can play him. He's fine. Wagner thinks a guy needs to be someone that you're like, okay, he's in the lineup and he's playing on the third line, or he's the second line. And it was interesting because I think your Jag is closer to what Drance and I think of, which is a guy like you can put him in the lineup, you'll be fine. Like he can play in your fourth line.
Yeah,
he's not dragging behind. I would say Will Lockwood was in the end was not a guy. Like he just couldn't. He didn't have enough there. We're now going to find out if Vitaly Krasov is at least a guy.
Which I think remains to be seen.
Yeah,
still.
Yeah. Whereas Wagner would say Brock Besser's. I mean, he's a guy, even if he's not scoring enough. He's still a guy. Like he was.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't agree with Wagner. He's placing it too high.
I mean, I rarely do agree with Wags about anything, especially humor. But like, poor Wags, he's a good dude.
He's a good man. He's a good man and thorough.
Yeah, I think our friends on the PP1 podcast used to have a segment. Don't know if they still do, called like Guys and Dudes.
Okay.
And like, and I'm pretty sure guys were like, kind of like your version, my version of it.
Yeah.
Like, he's a guy, but the dudes were the guys you could depend on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of dudes, like, the dudiest of dudes must be Andrei Kuzmenko this season. Like, like, the most fun on and off the ice. Like, how are you looking at that bet that the Canucks have made on him with his new contract? Are you looking at any differently than when they signed it, or still cautious?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be very interesting to watch next year because, like, the question is, do you believe he's a 25% shooter? He's never been a 20. Even in the KHL, he wasn't. The difference is his case he made to me and Wags, essentially, and Wags wrote a very good piece about it, is that coaches have always told him to shoot more, and he's actually shooting more. And look what's happening. So, and I think the goalies have said that he has the heaviest shot in practice. They're like, there's a lot in it. But you think about the goals he scores, they're in tight, like the goal score goals, they're in tight, they're tips.
Yeah.
Like he's got the most tip goals in the NHL. And there's some skill to that. Like the comparison I've been making with the Canucks and point shots and tips, because they've been really good at this year, is, you'll appreciate this. This is a soccer analogy. Simeone, when he was at Atletico Madrid, decided, he looked around and said, no one else is doing set pieces. Nobody cares about set pieces. Nobody thinks about set pieces. I am going to make the set pieces a weapon. I think we can do this. And just trained. And to the point where Atletico Madrid had this incredible set piece because nobody knew how to defend it, because nobody ever bothered practicing it, because everyone thought it was a luck of the draw thing. And so they were really good at it. And a couple of years later, your Vancouver Whitecaps were doing exactly that. And when I figured this out, I put this to Carl Robinson, and Carl was just like, he was just like, he figured me out, goddammit. But, I think of the Canucks with point shots and tips, they've made it work in such a way that it is an effective weapon, and it's a real outlier kind of thing. I think teams will come to adapt to it. I mean, I had a great chat with Bo Horvat before he left about it last fall. And basically one of the things it's an Adam Oates thing. Essentially, Adam had taught or given him ideas on how to find space when you're deflecting. And, traditionally the guy would go to the front and stand in front of the net. Well, the guy that goes in front of the net in Horvat's vision pushes out, and it has to do with how defensemen defend now. They're not going to follow you off the crease, basically, and so you create separation. And if you look at Kuzmenko, you look at Anthony Beauvillier since he's come in, those guys they're operating in the sort of middle of the slot, and there's no one, so they actually have time to actually manipulate their stick and actually track the shot in. So I think there's something to that. But whether it, can be repeated is another question. So, he's strong, he's a bull, he knows how to use his size, he gets in tight, he has this great ability to finish. But I would say, so that's kind of where I'm at. But I think I am kind of in the camp that you need guys you need guys. Like at the end of the day, you need players. So, I totally understood the argument that really they should have flipped him, and if they'd flipped him, I would have said that's the right move. But I also have a hard time. One of the things that has really frustrated me, and I wrote a little bit about this at the time, was that we've ended up in this scenario where that's even a discussion. Like it shouldn't be. That's what you should be upset about. Actually, is not that they didn't trade him. Is that we're in that spot to have a discussion, because at the end of the day, he's a fun player. He does fun things, and the team overall should be moving in direction to optimize that. And that's honestly, where we're at.
Honestly, Kuzmenko should be the biggest win for the Canucks. That should be home run win. They charmed him when he was because they didn't take him to Joey's Edmonton did. He picked Vancouver. He's thrived here maybe better than he has anywhere else.
Yeah.
And he signed a new contract and he loves it and he's fun. But just because of how far behind the Canucks are, that's when you start to question it. So, you're right, it's unfortunate, but
I mean, and that's the thing. And
they made their bed, right?
Yeah, I would say it is part of the as I noted, as I said in my tweet, after the Roenick trade, I just had a lot of confused people. What are they doing? Because everything in the week before that had been, this team is clearly going to be well, we're just going to juice our draft this year, and we're not going to worry. We've got enough pieces here and there, and we're just going to kind of see what we can do. And the Roenick trade clearly is them saying we need to be a playoff team next year, which, I think, hear me out, deserves some credit. But yeah, at the end of the day, moving out a first round pick in a way, for a guy, you're okay, he's good, but you were so high on this first round pick. So was this a deal you had to make right now? The price is a lot higher right now than it would be after the season or in the summer or whatever. Yeah. So, in the end, Alvin's well, we didn't think he was going to be available. And I guess, did they not think there were going to be any other guys of a similar quality available? I mean, okay, that's half the game, is trying to figure out who's around and what's happening. And sometimes you distract, but I think in the end, Steve Yzerman, I think, has been documented, saw an opportunity. I don't quite get what he's doing in Detroit, but so they've ended up with a good player, but the price is
official.
So, but I was just going to let me get back to the playoff thing. I made the reference about them pushing for the playoffs. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is the work that the Leafs and the Lightning have put in, right? Think how good those teams are. And one of them's not going to get out of the first round. And so there's an element of thinking where you're ooh, that's a lot of work for nothing. Getting in the playoffs is hard. And then, of course, the playoffs themselves are hard. And, so there is a cynical way of thinking about it. Well, in the end, playing playoff games is enough. And that's not what fans want to hear. And I think fans should rightly expect more. But at a certain level, I can appreciate the idea of being well, playoff hockey's pretty fun. We got in the playoffs. That's pretty good. But, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I think if it were any other owner, I could maybe, but, you know, in the end, we've just seen too often that's, you know, the approach, there's so much baggage still around. You know, you look at OEL, you look at Myers, you look at how the number of people that have left the organization, you know, otherwise. There's been, you know, it's just...
it's messy.
It's just messy. And so you're like, come on. You know, go full in, go the ambitious route. Like, if you'd held that first rounder, you'd be able to pick 2 guys this year. Here's the quiz question I've thrown at everyone, Anna. Do you know how many players drafted in the top 20 in the 2020 draft have not yet played in the NHL?
2020 first COVID.
2020 is the season. That's the draft that essentially is unaffected by COVID because all those kids had a season.
Right. No, I'm just trying to remember
2 seasons ago.
Watching it online.
How many of those kids have not made the NHL of the top 20?
I don't know.
2. And they're both Russian.
Yeah.
So, like, what are we even talking?
I was gonna say.
What are we even talking about here? It takes you know, your top 10 guys. They're playing in the NHL by the time they're 19. Like Pedersen, Hughes were both in the NHL when they were 19. And guys 10 to 20 takes them 2 years. So, like, you could have picked a defenseman and a forward, and you already have them in the lineup in 2024. So, like, that's the thing that I can't look past with the Roenick deal. Like, he's going to be good. He's going to be something really good next year. But you're like, we're doing this again?
I mean, you're 100% right, but, like, let's look at, like, what the Canucks are doing. Like, Miller's 30. Like, they can't wait 2 years. Like, they can't, like, it's stupid, but, like, they can't wait 2 years to start building something.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is the sort of counter argument, isn't it? Right? Like,
yeah.
So
they've got to hunt for 25-year-olds, and
you know, so now it's like, okay,
22-year-old
and Pedersen and Hughes, who are essentially in their prime next year, with their goalie hopefully playing really well, a still not too old JT Miller, and Roenick essentially in his prime, and Kuzmenko having a great offensive season, maybe one of the other Russian kids takes a step forward. There's sort of, okay, all of a sudden you're like, I'm sure that's where they're at. They're like, hey,
that's a great
we'll
sound
be
to
a
sum
pretty
up.
good team, but you're like, well, what about the rest of your division? But
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, it's Pacific, it's fine. Yeah, I think that's, like, honestly a fair thing, but, like, I guess what we have to do is just wait and see, because the Canucks haven't left us another option that, like...
I mean,
yeah.
The tough thing in the end is, what is it? There's still people cheering, right? Like, this is the thing, I get it, and it's sort of that, it's the only game in town, and certainly ownership banks on that. But the fact that they're selling tickets for $29, $39, I mean... The thing that was kind of amazing, I didn't realize this. I had a friend who was there last week, and he goes up, you can get twin sales on tap. Nice beer. You get that juice. He got a large, big one. It's $25.
Yeah.
And he's just like, and I sat there and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? In the old days, you'd buy 2 beers. That's the price of 2 beers, but you're only getting 1 now. And that's what they're kind of banking on. They're just like, well, he's not coming back, but at least he bought the equivalent of 2 beers. And also, we still have a bunch of beer to sell next game.
Yeah, like, it is actually quite shocking. Like, the beer prices, like, have increased significantly on last season. It's probably a difference of about, like, almost $5.
Yeah.
So it is huge,
so they're trying to recoup their costs, because they're basically, it's the lost leader to get you in the door, and they're just like, well, maybe we can make some money selling you some stuff. But I just don't think people are buying 2 beers. They're paying $50 for 2 beers. I just don't think that's happening.
No, and I don't think, like, I think it'll wear thin. Like, this town, like, it's not Toronto. People will stop.
I think it already has. I think it already has. Like there are issues. Like, I know, I talked to, I heard from a season ticket holder who, his company had a box, and they're actually thinking about giving it up. Not necessarily, not just because the team hasn't been playing great, but because there's just not as people working downtown. So, like, there's fewer people to entertain, fewer of their staff want to use it, fewer clients want to go because everyone wants to go home. Because that's the other thing. It's not just COVID. People live in Langley or whatever. Like, because of the cost of living,
the spread,
people have spread out more. So it's just the business has fundamentally shifted. And you know, I mean, the NHL still is a very gate-driven league. And one of the things with the Canucks, obviously, was, you know, they've done very well with filling their building for a very long time, but they haven't filled their building in, you know, 5, 6, 7 years. And there hasn't been pent up demand to get season tickets the way there used to be. So, you know, that part of it all has shifted. And I'm just kind of going, oh, you know, like at some point, you know, are they going to be able to, at some point, is that going to run out? I don't know if it's soon, but I certainly know it's not as easy as it used to be. And I don't think, you know, in the end people are not, the whole point of all this, any of this, is to create, you know, sort of stickiness, right? Sticky fans. You want them to stick, you know, diehards. And I have no idea how to gauge how many diehards there are anymore, because, you know, there's still obviously people buying season tickets, but you know, like when I did the last Boudreaux game, and I went outside and talked to a couple of fans on the street, and I asked one of them, you know, I asked one guy, what do you think? And he goes, oh, it's terrible. I mean, everybody agreed it was terrible. And he was like, I can't keep supporting this. I'm giving up my season tickets. And the other guy basically was like, what else am I going to do? There's nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so I think they're banking on those people, but there's, you know, those people are going to be fewer and fewer. And
yeah. And I think the thing is, like, if the product's not there on the ice, and, like, tickets are still expensive, at least in the first order, maybe they're reducing them, but, like, and merchandise is crazy expensive, like, and the, like, beers are expensive, whatever. And I do think they're doing a better job in in-game entertainment than they used to, but, like, I mean, Crazy P's a problem, but that aside, like, I do think their community engagement is better, and I do think their in-game entertainment is slightly better, but, like, and Rogers is a mess. Like, it's not a nice building. Like, so, you know, something's got to give at some stage, right? Like,
yeah, like the roof leaks and the ice, you know, the ice making system needs to be replaced. And
talking of sticky, the seats.
Forget about without even getting to the seats. You know, like, it's an old building. It needs work, and Yeah, it's just, you know, I
feel like we went up and now we're down again.
So, is it time for a break?
So that's okay. It's time for another break, I think. And then I think when we come back, we've kind of gone to the distant future, and maybe we'll go to the near future after the break.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
So we did a bit of looking out towards the end of the season, the off-season, near the top. But, like, overall, what do you think Canucks need to see? Like, what do we need to see from the Canucks in the end of the season? And I suspect there's two answers, like, from, like, a sort of media fan perspective, and, like, what do you think the, like, management are looking at in the last, 15 games here?
Well, I mean, they obviously want to see, they're taking stock of guys like Phil DiGiuseppe. I mean, DiGiuseppe, they've cut, you know, obviously signed a 2-year deal. He's a veteran guy. He's a guy they really value what he was able to bring in Abbotsford. As a few people pointed out, adding a second-year deal is going to probably make him unlikely to be, or second year on his deal makes it unlikely that he'd get claimed on waivers. Similar with Brisebois, although I think there is a secondary element to the Brisebois deal, which is that, they're basically saying, hey, maybe you're a number 7 guy 2 seasons from now in the NHL. And,
yeah.
I
mean, he's been here long enough.
So they're doing bits like that. They're taking a look at, what does Christian Wolanin look like in the way we want to play in with this coach? He's played enough NHL games that we have a pretty good sense of what he's at. Can he be this number 6 guy? What do we make of a guy? What do we make of Noel Juleson? What do we make of in the end, what do we make of Kyle Burrows? There's sort of those kinds of questions. There's how does how do these kids shake out? Does Kravtsov have anything? I think they talk a lot about guys like Ratu and what have you, guys like that who Studnicka, they want to see what they're like. They give them a summer to add some strength, add some sort of elements like that. Can they put anything more on? Is that going to make it sort of a marginal difference? They talk about 2% gains and things like that.
Yeah, gains, yeah.
So they're certainly looking at trying to understand what is in these players. Is there a little bit more they can find from these guys? And
what about the goalie situation? What do you think that?
I said this last week on Sakaris and Price. My gut, and I don't have any reason to think this, but I think my gut is that Demko will be the guy. I think they probably go with, say, Seelovs. And then, there's an outside chance, I suppose, that they keep Delia and make him the backup. But I think what you do is you run with Martin as your kind of Richard Bachman type out in Abbotsford. He's your number 3. You bring him in because you need some veteran experience. But
I think Seelovs, it's hard because Seelovs just had such a rough time with development. This is really his first year. Given everything that this is his first year as the guy in Utica and in Abbotsford. Wow, that was a throwback.
Yeah.
He hasn't. He's done really well considering they've had since Demko went down, no backup in Abbotsford. ECHL guys coming in and out who have not performed that great. But I think he's just still so early.
Yeah.
In his development.
Yeah.
So.
It's we'll see. I think it's really there's sort of the other option is one of Delia or Martin backs up again. And you just keep letting
depend on Demko being the guy again.
At the end of the day, Demko, that's what the bet is.
I guess that's been the bet from the start. Once you sign OEL, once you sign Myers, you're betting on Demko.
I don't know how seriously they really talked to it. I think that everything was on the table. I think they were willing to consider any and all trades.
Right.
I don't know really how aggressive they were talking about Demko though, because in the end he's, we've seen what he is. He means if he plays, he's a lot, and as far as I know, he's always said I think he likes it, and I think he likes it here. It's there is a lot of sort of stuff behind the scenes that have frustrated players here and there.
Of course.
But on the whole, they get to live. They do like living in Vancouver. It's a pretty nice setting. Look at a guy like Demko. It's pretty close to home.
Yeah. And, it's a tough market, but you've got a market that pays attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of on that Pedersen vibe, we've kind of seen him step up with Hughes kind of in that leadership role. Previously I've been an advocate of not really giving him that overwhelming responsibility, but he does seem to be if he wants it badly, give him the captaincy, I guess. But I don't know how much stock you put in that like formal role of like being a captain or not. I think Wags and I discussed this earlier on in the season, but yeah, like, is that something you think is important to Pedersen?
I mean, I think bottom line for him, he wants to win. I don't know if he's necessarily I don't know if he's necessarily an instinctual captain. He certainly is a guy that, sets the tone.
Yeah.
And I think sets the tone in a way you really want.
Mm-hmm.
I think, in a way, Marcus Naslund, it was funny. I was listening to the Ridtool podcast about all this. And they picked Marcus Naslund to be the captain. I'm not sure I was trying to remember before whether we ever really talked about him as a captain type. I don't think people instinctually had him on their list or very high up their list. But in the end, he became a tone setter, a professionalism sort of setter. And he talked a lot about just the way you carry yourself. And that, he is one of the many guys who tries to speak truth to what they felt Marc Messier brought here. I mean, obviously it's not something the fans want to hear. Fair enough. But he was in that, and he wasn't a raw guy, but he was in how you carry yourself at the rink, how you bring yourself to the rink, what you do, how you play, whether you speak truthfully. And people ripped him for saying they choked, but he was speaking how he felt, and I think in a weird way that helped him connect better with certainly the fans. But at the end of the day, he's still also like, in that last Trevor Linden game, like the focus was not as much on Naslund as it should have been, because obviously Linden was the sort of long-held sort of community hero, whatever, but Marcus Naslund had a way better career, and he was the best player in the world at one point as a Vancouver Canuck, and Trevor Linden was never even close to that. So, his last game was, it wasn't great how that all ended, but that perhaps spoke a little bit to the kind of sort of assumption, I guess is the word, or the sort of people really just got used to being there. So maybe there's something for Pedersen that way. I mean, obviously things have changed. Although how much have they changed? I mean, the media market, how people consume their media is different, but people still pay attention. So could he be a captain who, Naslund was always there. I was talking to a couple people about this back, because this question's come up before. And I said, what was Naslund? No, Naslund was always there. He was a guy that, and that was something that the city, Henrik picked up on, is you were there after every loss. You wear that. Yeah. And Petey hates, they all hate losing, but Petey hates losing. And we've had him after some losses, and he's just like, he does it because he has to. He gets asked for. But he does, in the end, he doesn't, I get it a lot. In those kind of situations, you want to do that. But those guys were like, no, we got to be there to answer questions, especially the bad ones. And, so, I don't think it's one of those ones that will make or break whether he chooses to stay in the long run. I think if he gets asked to do it, I think certainly he'll be like, yeah, sure, let's go for it. And there are a lot of examples where the best player on the team has simply been picked as the captain, and the rest of the kind of team manages to organize itself and carries on. So I think realistically that's kind of the window he's in. He doesn't have to be the guy. I don't think it makes a difference if he is or isn't.
Okay. Yeah. It's just interesting because I think I probably changed my mind on whether you think he should or could or wants to be it. Yeah. Over the years, I've definitely been an advocate of best players shouldn't be captain. But sometimes you're just the guy, Connor McDavid, is the guy in Edmonton, and he's boring as hell, so that's maybe a good thing for a captain to be. Yeah. Pedersen's not boring, but he's reserved in some ways, and just has that kind of European ways. looking into the off-season again, like, Canucks signed kind of long-awaited free agent Aidan McDonough today. They seem to be, like, pretty active in the free agent market. Like, is that just, like, inevitable and part of their 20 to 25-year-old, like, hunt that they're going on?
Well, I mean, I think that in that case is coincidental. I mean, I think they would have preferred to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they would have obviously preferred to sign him last year. But as Ryan Johnson has made it very clear, they were going to pressure him to give up a final year of college or finish what he felt he had to finish. Yeah, I mean, in the end, he's a kid that certainly has a great shot, great power play weapon. He still learned how to skate. Like, it's kind of where it's at.
I mean, yeah. And that's, like, the case of a few players the Canucks have signed recently. But, you know, like, you can teach players how to skate. Like, that is a thing that can be improved upon.
Yeah.
Canucks have a wicked skating coach out in Abbotsford, so
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. So
it is a possibility.
Yeah, no, it is exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Aidan McDonough is not going to be Bo Horvat. Let's be clear. But Bo Horvat had a lot of questions about his skating coming in, and he got a lot better. So, you know, it's not like it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's
Ratu's like again.
Yeah, same
like,
kind of
player.
story. Like they, you know.
Yeah.
Same kind of story. I mean, Ratu. I would say this. I don't hear I haven't heard the questions about ability to process the game as I've heard about Ratu. Like, people have the questions about whether he just can get it. I mean, it has
the processing speed.
Yeah, just like the game's really fast. You know, it's just and some guys in the end just don't have it. And I don't think that's, I mean, that's every guy that ever comes into the NHL tells you how fast it is. So we'll see. But I think more than anything, McDonough's like, you know, he's certainly an interesting prospect. And it sounds like he's going to play some NHL games. We'll see. I'm not sure if he'll play right away, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. You know?
Yeah. Do you think, like, as a tactic, that's something worth pursuing? Or, I guess we'll see, but it's so hard to tell, like, just because they're NCAA players, like...
Oh, I mean, they're definitely in after some other guys. I mean, Faber had the list, and that was a list I'd heard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no.
But, like, I guess, like, comparing that to drafting... Like,
oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's an avenue that adds a certain type of player.
Right.
You know, these guys are basically who they are. You know, the fact that they get to work out as much as they do in you know, when you play in collegiate hockey, because you're only playing, you know, Friday, Saturday kind of thing.
Right.
You know, so physically they're always ready.
Yeah.
Just the question is, can they translate the rest? And you know, certainly, like, you know, you look at Mark Michaelis, for instance, a guy that probably deserved a little better. You know, you give him a year in the AHL, maybe, or half a season in the AHL, so you can get up to speed. Instead, he started in the NHL, and it was the COVID season. Everything was terrible, and you know, in the end, he was totally ineffective. So, but you know, we've talked about Troy Stetcher, we've talked about Chris Tanev. You know, those guys. You know, Stetcher's in the lineup almost right away. Tanev needed essentially half a season. People forget, like, obviously Tanev was a special case because he'd only played 1 year of college and was 20 or whatever when he signed. So, you know, he was right in that window. But, like, the thing, I mean, you go all the way back to Ryan Kessler. Like, Ryan Kessler needed a half a season of pro hockey before, you know, in the AHL before making the transition to the NHL.
But also, I mean, Chris Tanev went down and played in the A during the half lockout, right? So him and Eddie Lack, and they were playing together in night, and I think they did improve a lot over that time, because also I think Chicago was pretty good at that.
Yeah, no, I mean, my point was like those guys are always closer to being a low end ability player on your team than anything. So yeah, it makes sense to chase them because they fill a role, and every once in a while you find a diamond in the rough and you find Chris Tanev, but you shouldn't be. Realistically, you're not not going to find Chris Tanev, but you might find Troy Stetcher. So,
right, and regardless of the merits of the process, like, they've given away first round picks, so that's the choice they're making. Yeah, okay. Like, last thing, and it's a prediction on just pick a number where Canucks going to finish.
Oh, in the draft?
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Give me a moment here. Let me look this. I actually need to draft odds.
So, yeah,
I need to actually.
Because the 25th.
I need to.
Right now.
Yeah, no, I just need to look at the actual, like.
Okay.
How it shakes out right now. Because I just want to look at where they are, because I haven't looked at where they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing, unfortunately, better than they were this time last week, but...
So they're currently 8th, right? Yeah, so they're most... Yeah, no. Yeah. So, because it was one of these ones when they were 7th.
Yeah,
it was most likely that they were actually going to be... yeah, when they were... yeah, sorry, that's what it was.
Yeah, because you have to look at the brackets, right? Yeah.
Like 1, 2, 3, 4,
yep.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, so they're sitting 9? No, counting wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, they're 8th last right now. I think most likely they're going to pick. Yeah. Yeah, there's a 33% chance they fall back. So
that's high. Like, it's not.
I think they'll pick. I think they're going to pick. I think they're going to pick 8.
Okay. I mean, like, this isn't like...
Yeah. No, I know.
We're not going to hold you to this.
No, but it's one of those ones I want to actually think about it. I hadn't actually thought about it for a while.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, 8.
Yeah.
All right. Like, I mean... That's a decent player to be picked up this year.
No,
in 8th spot.
I mean, that was...
But...
Yeah, I mean...
Not a life-changing player, but...
No, I mean... Yeah, they're 8 points back at Detroit. Yeah, they're not catching Detroit. They still might fall behind Philly, but Philly's also terrible. The one I actually enjoy is Arizona as kind of an X factor. Like, can Arizona actually play better? But you look at the goal differential where things are shaking out. You know, maybe they finish ahead of St. Louis. But yeah, I mean, 8th or 9th. I mean, realistically, this is the thing. Like,
no, it doesn't matter.
It's I mean, when they were sitting 6th last, I mean, maybe that was the thing I was looking at when they were in the 6th spot.
Yeah, like, and Arizona kept winning. And
but in the 6th spot, there was a 50% chance they were going to fall back. Right, like it's kind of weird odds. When you're sitting 5th is kind of the worst spot to be. You're almost certainly going to fall back. I don't really understand why they weight them the way they weight them, but
neither do I.
It's a very
strange system. I
like
famously do not math.
Like fourth is the worst place to be. Fourth, you're almost certainly going to fall back. Like you have a 2 and 3 chance of falling back. Like,
yeah.
Why do we do this? If you finish last, I mean,
honestly?
You know, I don't know. They're trying to dissuade you from tanking, but like,
yeah, and I don't know what the answer is, but like, it's not. This isn't working.
The answer is to get creative and learn from relegation battles and do things like that. Like, change the way your schedule is set up and give your team something to do over the last 20 games other than not try to win.
Yeah, like, I don't know, like playoffs in soccer, like the championship into the Premier League, like such a fun way to finish the season. I mean, and I think in other countries they take the top and bottom and put them into a mix.
I'm not saying you necessarily need to relegate, but I think you find a way to build some incentive into the end of the season. Like, people have talked about the goal plan for years, and maybe that's it. But or I mean, like, Camp Sharon had some interesting idea where basically you create essentially I can't remember how he structured it. It was kind of, there's a tournament that is in like the last 20 games. Like, you kind of hit stop at game 62 or whatever. and then you find a way
Right.
in, or you game 72 in the last, I don't even know. But there's got to be ways to create some kind of interest. I just think, but what do I know? I think there's always, the thing that you always have to remember is that in any plan built by the NHL, there's inherently a sort of mediocrity in it that, how much worse?
I mean,
how much worse could it be? Okay, no, that's not too bad. And then that's what they go for. It's like, how much better could it? Yeah. What's the cost benefit of doing it the way that people really want to do it? No, that's too much. What about this? Will people be kind of mediocrely? How are people happy enough with this? Okay, we'll do that.
The NHL, just gunning for mediocrity is just such a good summary of it's just so much. What a great way to leave it, I think.
We went high,
I actually
and then we went low. Every segment. Look at us.
It's been a roller coaster.
Chris will be proud of us.
I always got told off for being too negative. It's fine. We have fun anyway. So, well, thanks so much for joining us, PJ. PJ's Rising Action on the Twitters. He's still going to be putting out articles no matter how bleak it gets. So, give him a follow.
Thanks, guys. Always a slice.
Yeah. So.
All right.
I will just take us out super quick with our admin. You can support us at support.c4podcast.com. That's where you can buy us a coffee or a pint, as we prefer to put it. Follow us on social media at the C4 Podcast on Twitter and Facebook. Come join us on Discord, Talks and Puck, discord.io/C4 Podcast. Okay, Chris is back next week, fingers crossed. With all that said, we out.